Hey YouTubers. I'm not a professional, but I'm going to attempt to make a video here, what I had done with the inverter. I ordered a Magnum Energy MMS 1012 1000 watt pure sine inverter with the monitor and several other parts to go along with it. Anyway, we'll start here at the breaker panel, tell you what I did. I don't have any how to do, but I'll give you an idea what I did, because to tell you the truth, my application was a little different, but we made it work with a lot of help from other YouTubers. So I figured I'd pass on what I came across. First of all, you have your shore power coming in. I have a generator on my toy hauler here. We had two circuits that I wanted to have on the inverter, being all of the electrical plugs. I'm not interested in the microwave, or pretty much that's about it in here, the microwave and refrigerator. But we had a breaker here and here. They were both 15 amp. One was a GFI, the other was a general plugs, anything that wasn't around water. And we removed those breakers from this panel. Just to go along and label everything here, we have the old converter here, which I no longer need. And as I've marked in here, this is the breaker for it. I decided to leave it in just in case we had an issue where the inverter was no longer charging. I had a backup. This converter will stay in. It's in this box here, in this cabinet, and we just left it in place. But it has the electrical switch in here, so when the generator runs or the shore power is plugged in, it chooses between the two, and that nothing has changed there. What I did do, though, is disconnected both those 15 amp breakers. I have run two separate wires. One is a number 12, put in a 20 amp circuit, marked inverter charger, ran this number 12 through conduit all the way up to the front of the trailer. Now this is kind of mid trailer right here. 25 feet is what I bought for the conduit and the wire to get up to the front end storage box where I have the inverter mounted. So we have the number 12 running up to the front. We also have a number 14 running alongside that in the same conduit up to the inverter. That will be my into the inverter and back out, coming back to the panel here. And just so we don't have to come back here again, I'll show you that inside here, the number 14 that's coming back is wire nutted to the existing plugs in the coach. So if you get that, I brought two number 14s back here, wire nutted it. So now the electricity, or the AC, goes to the inverter, turns around, comes back on the output of the inverter to the electrical outlets in the coach, out through here. So you really don't have a switch here. We have two 15s back up at the front, and before I go there, we'll show you the run that I made underneath, and then we'll make it up to the inverter. So here's the wire, or the conduit, coming out with the wire inside that was run all the way up to the front of the trailer. It's wire tied and, you know, held up pretty securely. There's no reason for it to come loose. They already had an opening in the floor here. You got some of this flex tape I put on here, but I'm going to be retaping that up, keep critters out of there. But in order to get into that area, we had to cut this open. So that was not too bad, because it's right underneath the cabinet where the fuse panel is. So now we'll move on up to the inverter. Okay, we got close quarters in here, so I'll try to get the whole thing in. I'm now underneath the bed. As you can see, there's a storage area down in here. Most of the travel trailers have this area. I'm sure if you have one of these, you're probably pretty familiar with this area. And the reason I chose this area was it's close to the batteries. If I want to, I can ventilate it. You know, if we're using it heavily and the fan comes on or something, you can always open up lift the bed up, or open the side door, which is around over here, and I can ventilate it that way. But I don't think it's gonna be a problem, being that we'll probably be running in the if we're out in the boondocks and we got a need for some power. You know, it's going to be short used. And like I said, this is only for running the TV if we want it on, running the stereo, you know, anything that's well, the stereo has an amplifier on it which pulls quite a bit of current. So hopefully, you know, we've already tried it out with 2 batteries, and now we got 3, and it seems to work fairly well. We haven't run the batteries down too far, and we have a 200-watt solar panel on the roof, so that helps too during the day. Just trying to minimize the generator running, you know, keep it down, so to keep the hours down, not for the smaller stuff that we don't need to run the generator for. That's kind of our goal. Anyway, getting to the wiring. So we come up through the floor. There's the same conduit coming up. It goes into this breaker panel, which was only used as a junction point for that cable, because it's at this point it comes out, it comes in here and goes right back up into the inverter. There's an in and an out connection right up here, and so the number 12 and the number 14 come into this box. Number 12 goes up in here, wires into the input of the inverter, and then the output wiring to the inverter comes back out the same hole. I had enough room. They have another hole here, but there was no reason not to bring it out of the same hole because I had plenty of room. So I ran the number 14 out now. And this has also got breakers here for the internal components of the inverter. But what I'm interested in is coming down here and bringing 2 15-amp breakers, one for the GFI and one for the general outlets. These are, that's the way it was up there in the front, so I wanted to keep it the same way. So I have 2 number 14s going back up to the front, and they're protected with these 2 breakers. These actually were the ones that were in that breaker panel, and now they're in here. Not a big problem. If I flip one, I can always get in here pretty easy. This is going to be kept clear at this point. Won't be putting anything obviously stacking up front, and I was a little worried about that when I put it in here, so I actually built this little sliding plexiglass door that keeps most of the exposed wiring, the hot stuff, the high amperage stuff. Of course, this is the input with a 300 amp catastrophic fuse, which is what it calls for if you're using a 2-aught wire. This is a 2-aught welding wire. And then this is the battery monitor shunt. This goes over to a controller that's back up here. Up here, this actually sends data to the monitor up front, and it talks to the box, the inverter, and lets it know what the inverter's doing to the batteries and so forth. It also has a connection that you put onto the batteries that monitors the temperature and the charge rate and everything of the batteries, which is kind of neat. You don't have to guess at what it's doing, but that's what these data ports are here that come in. And that's kind of what we ended up down here with. we'll go up and I'll show you the battery bank now, what we're running it with. So here's the battery bank. I got 3, I don't know, they're 550 cranking amps, cold cranking amps. They're Deco, I guess Deco. I don't know. This is what came with the RV. I ordered a third one. I only had 2 up here, and I wanted to have just a little bit extra, so I ordered another battery. Problem was the 2 single battery boxes that were up here were not going to accommodate 3, so I ended up buying this NOCO 8D battery box, which fit perfect. The straps that were down here for the other batteries didn't have to touch it one bit. I built some brackets that went in between it, mounted it to the metal, and that kept it within the same dimensions of the bracket that's in there, and fit perfect. So if you're looking for one with 3 batteries, I didn't want to, I mean, it'd be nice to have a 4th battery, but I didn't want to take up any more room up front in any area, but plus it's extra weight, tongue weight. This will do what I needed to do. But everything's wired with the 2-aught welding wire. I did add a shut-off switch. Magnum, I called them and I asked them where they put the 300 amp catastrophic fuse in the diagram, and I asked them where we would put a shutoff, and they said it should be in between the fuse and the inverter, which to me, that means I got hot wire running from here all the way to the fuse. So what happens if something happens, with it, from here into the coach? And so that's why I went ahead and I put a switch here. I have the other switch is for the coach. This actually, it comes in here, or it goes out here, goes over to this, powers the 12 volt for the coach. So that's the shut off that takes 12 volts into the 12 volt fuse panel, which is located right there at the circuit breakers. And so I need two shut-offs. And then of course the generator is hooked up directly to this area also, and is hooked into that shut-off switch. That's in here, the jack control, the power jack, the solar panels. I put one of these, since it did have an extra post, I added this battery post connector just so I could keep these fairly clean, not have too many connections on them. And then over here we got same thing going on, with the exception we got this is that Magnum battery monitor that goes over to the inverter and tells the condition of the battery, what it's doing, whether it's too hot. It limits the amount of charge that's sent to the battery so you don't boil them over, which I really like the Magnum products. They seem to have it all together. And I had a gentleman I ran into that was wiring some buses, and he says, don't even mess with anything else. He says Magnum has a good reputation for making some good stuff. So I didn't even question it. I just said, I'll just pay the money and do it. I don't want to have to mess with this thing too much. So hopefully that's the case. So our last and not least, but here's the control panel. It gives, it's got more information than I need, but it gives you the status of the inverter and your batteries and so forth. I won't go through all that. There's plenty of videos showing you the all the configurations you can change and so forth. But one of the things that I like is just I have control of turning it on or off right here. I can charge from right here if I want to kick it into a charge mode. But anyway, this pretty much explains everything that's going on. It's well worth getting. It's not a cheap little addition or easy to wire in. This actually has a phone cable type coming all the way from the inverter that you had to wire in with the breaker panel. You know, coming in, not wire through the breaker panel, but wire coming up. The wire coming up to the breaker panel is what I used to get it to this location. So anyway, it's working good. I hope, you know, this answers some of your questions, and I know that I searched and between YouTube and phone calls, I got this, got it up and running, and no smoke. Good thing. Thanks for watching.